Hello, kitchen utensils. Welcome to the next episode of To Be Social. Sam?
Utensils from the kitchen. Is that how low we've had to go to find an entrance?
Well, it's got everything in it. You could be a whisk. You could be a masher.
If you had to be a kitchen utensil,
what kitchen utensil
what
would you be? I'd like to be a kitchen utensil that doesn't get used, but is really integral for one specific job.
Like a pasta maker. You're a pasta maker.
Yeah. Something complicated that you use once and then you can never put back together.
Mm.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What
are you?
I don't know, like a garlic press with an inserty bit.
An inserty bit?
Yeah.
What the inserty bit is missing?
Yeah, because then you can't squash the garlic.
An over-engineered one that you find
We've
in
gone
TK
bad.
Maxx.
We've gone bad. It's already lost its mind. Let's start again, shall we?
Why?
No, let's not start again. We were already there. Hello, welcome everybody, and we're going to jump straight into this crazy thing that is the To Be Social podcast. This is episode number 6.
Is it 6?
Amazing. This is how far we've come in just a few weeks. We're in a new location, another setting, another studio, and sitting right beside me is our fabulous guest today, the wonderful Jack Drury.
Hello, Jack.
Hello.
You have to say hello because there are some people just listening as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
hello. It's an audio medium, isn't it?
Not just for film.
Yes. Hello, audio listeners.
Hello, audio listeners. Hello, video listeners.
Hello, people.
Yeah.
That was sincere, wasn't it? Didn't come across like that.
Well, go on, try. Give it your best, Sean Connery.
Hello, people! That wasn't
Wow.
Sean Connery.
Very good.
Who was that?
I don't know. It just came out.
All right. Well, so we're starting in the Sean Connery style. And, there you go. Jack's off. Right, he's got a mouthful of water and he's on. So welcome. We're trying something new here. We're trying to get deep into the audio industry. We're going to try and plug the air gap every week. And this is really important for us as an industry to come together, have a conversation. We drop the banners of brands and everything. This is about us as people. I've known you for crikey, nearly 12, 13 years now,
it's a chunk.
Easily. And I think that's again testament to how things evolve. And what's really important is that us as people work together no matter what's going on, and breaking those barriers, trying to understand a little bit more about what's going on the ground, and bringing different experiences and journeys through to the listeners and the watchers, so that they can all feel part of the industry. And for those that don't know the audio industry,
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
it is a mouthful.
Yeah.
But anyway, where we are today is here to talk to you about you and your journey into the world of audio. Where did you start? How did it come about that you really wanted to get into sound?
So I think my journey is probably similar to most people's. I was in school, and in my school, there'd be like a kind of theatre thing going on. So they'd be putting shows on at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And if you were vaguely interested and vaguely competent, you would end up in the tech team and expected to put some stuff on. So the tech manager at my school was a lovely man called Gary. And I was just the bane of Gary's life for about 3 years while I was like, Gary, how does this work? What does this do? And I don't know if you're listening, Gary, I haven't spoken to you in a very, very long time. I think Gary was probably making most of it up as he went along as well, to be honest. So we were
there's a challenge, Gary.
Yeah. Gary, where are you?
Gary, where are you? Let's find out.
Tell you what, Gary, awesome producer, like showed me Cubase first of all. But I remember doing some like performances, and it was just like Feedback City and Happy Days. So I think we were all trying to figure a lot of stuff out actually at my school, and I really enjoyed that. And then I made all of the kind of bad decisions in terms of education. I decided that I wanted to go and do history at university. So I did A-levels based on doing history at university. And then kind of had a very honest conversation with myself. So I got to a point where I had done my A-levels. I hadn't done a great job, really. And I was like, I had a place. I could have gone to Gloucestershire Uni to study history. And I had the place and it was ready to go. And then a week before I was due to go, a very honest conversation with myself that basically went, like, you like history, but it's probably, you're not the most academic person that's ever existed on the planet. You'll go. I figured that I would get very drunk. I'd probably make all of the mistakes, try all of the drugs.
Be a student.
Be a student.
Or failing to see a negative to this story.
Yeah. Well, it was $3,500 a year when I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And that I mean, that's $9,500 a year now. So it's a lot of money.
By today's standards.
Cheap by today's standards. But even at $3,500 a year, I was just like, I don't think I will complete this degree. Basically, is where I got to. I think I'll maximum do 2 years and then probably drop out and go and do something that I really want to do.
So you knew very early on that you could talk to yourself in a way that would culture a change.
I have had 2 honest conversations with myself in my life.
Just 2?
Just 2.
Just
That is one of them.
Were we allowed to know the second one?
We'll see how the podcast goes. But that was like one of the genuine sort of moments of, I don't really know if this is a good idea. And I feel like I should go and make some different decisions. So I did do that. And I decided to deny the Gloucestershire University opportunity. But through very complicated means, I had somewhere to go in Gloucester. I had like a house kind of prepared with a load of second year students that I was going to go and move into. So I decided to move in there and then study it was a HNC at the time in music production, and then just see kind of what happened. I figured that I'd go, I'd spend a bit of money, we'll see what happens. And then after that, I started to try and be a musician. And then I found that was really fun, but also kind of other stuff existed. So my brain really loved the idea of the audio chain. So here's where all your inputs are. Here's where your outputs are. Here's everything you need in the middle to make that work. And then I started to find that other people really didn't want to do that. They wanted to mix the show, or they wanted to be the musician. And I was quite happy to kind of get involved in that bit. And then that led me to working for Stage Electrics, which is where we first met.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I came and visited one day to the London office, which is no longer there, is it?
That was correct.
Walked through the front door and was greeted by your face and was like, "Oh, hello, how are you?"
It was less beardy.
Less beardy. Well, yeah, I suppose you.
It was a long time
maturing
ago.
at that point is the fair thing to say there. And yeah, we had a good conversation to start with, and I think that's how our journey began as colleagues and friends. And yeah, we don't get to spend huge amounts of time with each other, but we have hung out a few times and we've gone to a gig here and there, and we've done some cool stuff. So in that journey of discovery, you had music as a fundamental part of it.
Yeah.
What did you play?
Guitar, and I had been learning guitar since I was about 12. And I had decided that's really what I wanted to do. So plan A, after even before the university conversation happened, to be honest, was you're going to go and be a rock star, aren't you? That's what you want to do.
Yeah.
So I put all of my brain points into that and tried very, very hard and was in a few bands. And, actually I got a foot in the door at one point with, label interest in a couple of things. But
who was it? Who was the label?
It's a very, very small indie label, but,
they're normally the best.
They are normally the best. The problem in that particular situation was just the band itself. Like trying to keep a company together. This is something that I'd love to speak to you about, actually. Like grow a business.
I'm going to get quizzed.
You are going to get quizzed. Yeah. I think that is the second most difficult thing you can do as a human being. The first is trying to keep a band together. I don't know. What would you say?
I've been in both situations, and I failed at the band bit as well. So clearly, it is the most difficult. I think it is a tough thing to try and keep groups of creative people working together on the same page all of the time with the same direction. Did you find, for me, it was a case of there was the interest in being the global superstar, and world domination is the only objective. But then reality kicks in that, you've got bills to pay, a job to do to fulfill that sort of basic life requirement of feeding yourself. And in trying to play original music, it's a really long journey, and the route towards that success comes at great cost. So I struggled to maintain 8 or 9 people in quite a large band, as one of the sort of founding members, and I think all of us had an equal part in it. But there were some that really wanted to achieve world domination, and others that were, yeah, cool, this is great fun. And I think that's where bands tend to go.
Yeah, it's different ideals, isn't it? You want to go in different directions.
Yes, and I would add into that seeking sort of you're doing a really good job. What's the word that I'm looking for? It's not. There's a word for this. Seeking praise, validation. That's it. It's insanely important if you're going to be in a band, because you're kind of putting your soul out there with your mates, right? And it's like, I need validation from the industry. This is a good thing. And as soon as anybody gives you that validation, you'll latch onto it. And that exists in the same world where promoters and A&R people and label people, they are trying to find something that they also can progress their career through, right? So they'll give you that validation to kind of lock you in some senses. Without, I mean, if I look back on it, we were never going to be in a situation where we'd be anything decent. We were never going to get signed.
The subjectivity involved in it is huge.
Completely correct. Yes. Now, when you are up and coming and you're maybe 19, 20, you'll believe what anybody tells you in that situation. If somebody tells you you're really good, if you stick with me, you're going to do well, you'll just stop taking anybody else's calls, or at least that's what we started to do. And we just kind of,
focused in on this thing.
What was that?
You went prima donna.
No, well, I think that we thought we were brilliant, actually.
You need that boost, though, like you said, the external verification, the validation, someone saying, "Oh, this is awesome." You need that boost in order to go and have the gumption to go and do it on stage a lot of times.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? If I often think about Bob Dylan and think, if he was singing now, with that unique voice, whether he'd get where he got to without being in that period of history. Because if you look at it from the outside in, he's a terrible singer. And you could argue that on so many different levels. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Loads of people think he's fantastic because of his songwriting, his poetry, and the whole thing like culminating together in his artistry. But how could you rephrase that now in modern society to get someone to go and do that and be that out?
I think the answer, my friend's hanging in the wind.
Too easy.
Can't set me up like that. Too easy.
That was absolutely outstanding.
Sorry. I like that game.
I think
it's a good game.
It's your podcast littered with these things. I hope it is.
Of course it is.
Fantastic. Absolutely excellent.
Did you expect an easy ride when you came through the door today? No. This was going to be good fun all the way through. It's about bringing a mix of a little bit of entertainment, but also that interesting journey and story that is useful for others to hear. And I think coming back to the point of subjectivity, choosing to move from being a musician into the audio world, again, being a great engineer or a great mix is also led to subjectivity.
Yes.
And what do you think without getting too deep into it, you've seen a few shows now and you've heard a few artists. What do you think the combination is to, what is it that's the combination that creates a great performance in terms of audio?
In terms of audio, that's a really, really great question. And I think it's changed a lot over the last, particularly 10 to 15 years, actually. We've gone from a world of a great show was the artist that you loved with a load of point source boxes turned up as loud as they could possibly be and a big load of analog outboard. And I was not able to go and see shows at that point. My mother was. My mum grew up in London and managed to see like the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton when they were playing in pubs. Yeah. Right, it's crazy, and she's fascinated to talk to on the subject. And I will ask her, what was the audio like? We never really heard anything. You're going for the energy of the thing, right? You're going to be there with your people in a world where social media doesn't exist, where you can't interact with these artists in any other way than to go and see them. You're going for a very different experience.
And to buy their music.
Precisely, and to actively put money into their project and to put validation into what these artists are trying to do. I think that the kind of contract between artists and audience at that point was very different. Now we live in a world where you have 24/7 access to whoever your favorite artist is, and you can go and have a look at whatever they're doing. If you're going to pay significant money to go to see a performance for an artist that you love, it's not enough just to be there and be in the energy. There's an expectation that the audio is going to be exceptionally good, that you're going to hear what you hear in the track, that you're going to see a spectacle like a Cirque du Soleil performance with pyrotechnics and lighting and video and production. And I think, to go back to your question, what constitutes a really good show now?
Yeah, what's the combination of elements that make up a great sounding show.
Yeah, I think that the great sound of the show, it does encompass a relatively small team of people all trying to achieve the same thing. And let me explain that a little bit more. Back in the day, you could have a terrible sounding show and people would still absolutely love it. Today, you're dealing with speaker systems that deliver absolutely everything with, you can hear everything the artists do, you can hear all the instrumentation. Yep. So to boil it down, to get a great sounding show, I think it's more than just the audio that's going in. I think it is, what is the lighting doing? What's the visual spectacle? What is everybody trying to achieve with this show? Gives you what?
Yeah, I mean, when I go to a gig, I often try and just stand. I often close my eyes to listen.
I'm forever standing in the middle of a mosh pit with my eyes closed. I'm permanently doing it and getting a copped in the face.
I was going to say, it's
genuinely for the same thing, because it's about your senses, isn't it?
But I try and zone out from everybody and everything that's around, and I've found myself doing that more and more as I've got older, but also more and more as I've learnt more about production and being involved in the industry in various different ways. And I struggle to watch performances. So like, I don't know, last week I was at Wembley with an artist, and I watched 1 minute and 30 seconds of the entire day's performances. My interest in it is different, and I struggle to, if I'm working, then I really struggle to watch a show. If I'm not working, I go and choose to watch one or pay to go and experience something. I really struggle with it. Again, I think that's not an uncommon situation where, and you kind of get. I mean, you're on the top 10 of this, because you can walk into pretty much any major gig now with open arms, and you get a backstage pass and crew catering and parking, and
it's not that amazing, unfortunately. I wish it was.
Come on. You can go anywhere, but that takes away some of the reality of going to gigs. Like, you lose that, you become a bit of a snob. I have anyway. I know that, because God, why am I here with these people? Like, I'm normally over there.
But I like it. Well, I mean, yes, I think that I was having a really fascinating conversation with a front of house engineer who was talking about this, and they were saying that to mix a show now, for them, they're mixing for the visuals. So much of how they approach the mix is from the visuals. And the reason for that is the crowd turns up and they pay 250, 300 quid to see the show, and they're expecting more than just an amazing audio experience. It has to be more. So,
as in mixing for mobile phone recording?
No, mixing for what's on the LED screen. That's a whole different
challenge, isn't it?
That's a whole, I mean, we can talk about MEMS diaphragms in mobile phones and how that kind of translates into audio on Instagram. If you like, we can go down that rabbit hole. I wonder if
to be social. We'll keep it fresh.
I think it's definitely an element of it, though, that it has to work on Instagram. What this engineer was saying is that if you've got a very complex performance with lots of LED elements, lots of lights flying around everywhere, you can't just mix for what you're hearing. You have to mix for what the artist wants it to look like.
Yeah, what you're seeing.
And it's a really fascinating kind of way of looking at it. Vice versa, one of the best gigs that I've ever seen was Red Hot Chili Peppers at London Stadium, a gig that I paid to be at because I love the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it was the first time that Frusciante was back with them. And that show is 4 guys on a stage. It's an analog console. It's like the simplest thing that you've ever seen. And it was the best sounding show that I've ever been to, because there's not a tremendous visual element to it. There's not an infinite array of DSP and plugins that you can throw at that show. It's studio outboard and analog, and it was really like just that kind of transformer-based compressor punch in the face that you get from analog components was such a different experience to hear in a stadium environment versus what I normally see, which is very, very clean, very processed, very kind of purposeful.
And that's partly because I suppose the professional company you're keeping is less from that grassroots background of pub gigging or through to academy size shows, and there's you've got artists that are jumping straight into arena and stadium level shows where production and the visual elements of production are funded to be there. Huge amounts of video, huge amounts of pyrotechnics, huge amounts of extra stuff. You got people flying around and all sorts of, that's like super scale production values. But 4 guys on stage, insanely good musicians over the last 30 plus years, easily, back to basics. And so in a stadium environment where it's very hard to engage people because it's just a much bigger environment, you often lose some of that magic of what you would get in a smaller venue. But do you find, where you've had that experience, then do you find comparison and say to those pop artists that are doing stadium shows, like, hey, why don't you just scale it back and like get people to focus on you, take away the whiz, the bang and the pop, and actually come back to whether or not they can perform? I tell you who the best at that is Ed Sheeran. He can stand and fill 80,000 seats night after night.
Yeah,
him and a guitar, loop pedal. Every so often, he'll have an additional couple of musicians come along with him, but he can create euphoria that is on a scale like you've never experienced.
It's like showmanship, though, isn't it? That's why the Chili's they don't need crazy pyrotechnics. You've got Flea and Frusciante running around playing like face melting solos on the bass and on the guitar. That's your visual engagement, is the actual band. It's the same thing, like if you want to remove it, Jack White did a thing where he'd like a phone amnesty. The Raconteurs did the same thing. It's like, you can buy tickets to our gig. We'd love to see you at our gig, but if you're coming, do not bring your phone. And if you're bringing a phone, it's going in a bin, because we don't want to look out and see torches and all people doing this. We want to see you looking at us and engaged in the music, what you're there for. I think that's a really interesting twist on it, about how the expectations of the audience has changed, and because of our adoption of technology, we're thinking about looking for different things.
Audiences of expectation has changed. I mean, away from glossy, supersized stadium gigs and arena shows, the average punter now expects a lot more on a basic level. So they go on holiday. I mean, we used to do a lot of stuff in holiday parks, cruise ships, places like that, hotels, and you have to almost deliver what people are seeing on a Saturday night of X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, Strictly Come Dancing, on a holiday stage that people aren't effectively paying a ticket price for. They're just getting that included with the overall package of their, couple of grand a year annual holiday.
I think what's driven a lot of that now is that the technology exists to do it. It didn't before.
That's right.
Now we can actually do these things. You can hear the album of Dua Lipa as Dua Lipa intended it to be heard, note for note, perfectly on a massive stage. You can go and watch a theatre show floating somewhere on, the Caribbean. You can watch an X Factor style performance in a small show. Like, the technology exists to do it, where it hasn't up until now.
But most of the time people were listening to this stuff on systems, i.e. just the speakers hanging out of their phone and not actually paying attention to that detail. So even expanding it up to a much bigger system, sometimes they're probably hearing things they've never heard, because they're not getting that reference point in mobile phone technology or accessing, okay, vinyl's come back, it's making a resurgence, 400% up on sales. Everybody's now releasing vinyls. I've seen cassettes being released recently.
That's been a thing for the last 5 years.
What's that all about?
Yeah. We're going to get CDs soon. To come back to something you said a minute ago, sorry.
That's
this is really interesting.
Carry on, this is your show, not mine.
You made a really interesting point about Ed Sheeran, the fact that works so well. And what's fascinating about that, in the context of what you were just talking about, there is no consistency in that show. He'll go up, he'll do a set list, but he might mess around with it. He's looping everything live, so the performance is completely different. There's little to no, as far as I'm aware of, kind of, playback elements to that show. He is literally just him. Why does that work in a stadium? I think it links something that you said earlier about Bob Dylan. And I remember somebody said to me once, a song is good if one person and an acoustic guitar can perform it. If you can boil a track down to one person and a guitar and it still works, you've got the good content. So while all this showy kind of elements and glitz and stuff is very important, I don't think that has changed. I think from, the 60s up till now, we still happily exist in a world of music where the content has to be good.
Gotta
have to have a good start.
It's the same how all of Bowie's stuff was a 12-string guitar, wasn't it? It was one man and a 12-string guitar before all of the makeup, the glitz, the glamour, the crazy shows. all of that was exactly the same.
Yeah, I don't think that's changed personally. I think that still exists. What has changed is that we have more to throw at that to kind of up the spectacle. But the content's got to be good, right? It still has to be good music.
What goes in comes out.
Precisely, yeah.
Something I find fascinating about this, and you're more on that end of it than I am, is how do you go about getting an artist to adopt like either a new technology or something when you're trying to change it on stage, and you go like, look, I've got this, you've currently got that. They do the same thing on the outside, but this one does it slightly different, or this one's got different features. Mm-hmm. What's the process like? How much does the artist have, like opinion-wise, and being able to change, what's on their rider?
Yeah, it's a really, really fascinating question, particularly in microphone world where I come from. So I've worked for Sennheiser and I currently work for Shure. So I've done RF for a very, very long time, and it has predominantly been artist-focused stuff, right? And this is always the big challenge. How do you get it on the rider? And the market for that is quite complicated. Some artists really care. Some artists really care about what they're playing into, and they have favorite brands and they have favorite systems, and there's stuff that they desperately want to use in their rigs. But for the most part, in my experience, it's an engineer-led discussion. And my job really is to go and build those relationships with the engineers. And the idea is that we give them opportunities to try stuff and it goes on the rider. But there is an absolutely important consideration in this factor. I personally believe that you can put as much effort as you want in with an artist or an engineer. And this does sometimes happen. And we both have experienced this, where a brand is saying, we really want to get artist X on our stuff. We're going to do anything to get this artist. But ultimately what we're doing, especially in microphone world, is, we're selling tools. We're working with a drill and a set of drill bits, and you're trying to find the right tool for the right screw or whatever it is that, whatever analogy you want to use. And you have to put trust as a manufacturer in the engineer that the artist has selected to make that correct decision. Now that sometimes means they're not going to pick your product, and you have to be happy that that is the situation. I think if you go into anything like that and you say, we're definitely going to win this, we've got the product, we've got the mic capsules to do it, you're kind of, going in with damp powder, because you're not accepting a universe in which you're dealing with somebody who has a vocal quality that doesn't suit your product. That is entirely possible because of the subjectivity involved. Your job is to present all of the options possible, and to, from a sales perspective, it's reliability, it's tourability, it's resale value, it's all of that sort of stuff. But we are ultimately dealing with something that the artist has to feel comfortable performing into.
Very Swiss Tony of you there. Selling microphones. We won't say the rest of it. The microphone, and it's, we've all sold microphones. We're selling microphones every day of the week. I think it's amazing. I say this all the time. I think it's amazing that I have managed and do manage to make a living exist on the basis of selling something that isn't necessarily what the world would deem hugely important. However, in order to relay messages, it's the only thing you need to start with. It's the first, it's the very first part of a signal chain. And if you think about every major statement or political statement or message that's been delivered by people that are working for world peace or anything like that, those whole, everything's been captured by a microphone.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of social justice that goes on with working in this field, but let's take that kind of more serious side away and come back to the music focus. How do you find, we're talking about a sales process, and in most cases, and I'm pretty confident in this statement, that a brand is a brand. They all started somewhere, mostly like any other business, with one or two people, and they've expanded out to be whatever they are at whatever scale, size, and reach that they have. And the interest for the brand now is to work with the artist to achieve marketing assets. Is that a fair assessment?
What, for a brand like Sure, for a microphone brand,
for any brand, I suppose. If that's your field of expertise, you're going to want to work and partner with people that showcase that product and your brand in the best way. And do you find, we always had this as a reference point, but the picture of the microphone with the artist actually sells more headphones than it may do other microphones.
Okay, so this is a really, really interesting point, and this is like a core topic, I think, for any kind of pro audio brand or anything. This is just my personal opinion on exactly what you're discussing. I think the mistake that can sometimes get made is you look at what the guitar brands do, right? So you take a brand like Fender or Gibson, they are selling a sexy product. Guitars are sexy. Artists will look at guitars.
If you're a guitarist.
Yeah, well, if you're a guitarist, whatever.
Kick off on guitar.
Fender or Gibson?
Fender. But
Yeah.
I was playing a Gibson last night, so I don't know.
What one?
Les Paul, but it's like a naked thing. It's very, very cool. Fender or Gibson?
Track boys, come on.
Fender's
Kick off on the guitar.
Fender's and whatever. If you're a guitar brand, if you are a Fender, your entire marketing strategy relies on artists taking your product out and playing them. That's it. And the guitars are of a price point. Even if you're spending, I mean, you can spend 300 quid on a Fender, you can spend $3,000 on a Fender, and Fender make money across
Either
that
end,
whole kind of situation. So your entire company relies on, John Frusciante or Michael Kiwanuka or somebody taking your product, playing it on telly, playing it somewhere. And there will be a sale that comes as a result of that. So therefore, your strategy is give the artist the product, right? And then do a load of marketing surrounding that's what happens. They're extremely good at it. I think Fender do this better than anybody because their entire strategy really is focused on the up and coming artists. So they're doing much less of the kind of giving guitars to like the Bonner masses of the universe that I can see anyway. They're much more focused on like the Fender First 50, where it's 50 artists a year, get guitars, get marketing, get play on the Fender socials, get gigs, and they take them up. And it has worked really, really well for them. The mic brands, the pro audio brands, in my experience, and again, this is my opinion, they can get caught up in that narrative and they can assume, as you've so eloquently pointed out, that if we get airtime with our products, that will lead to sales elsewhere down the line. But the market, the kind of sales proposition is very different. So if you take our top tier system, which is Axient Digital, this is our bread and butter system at Shure. This is the one that we want to be out there in the market. It's the one that, it contributes a large part of our revenue as a brand. That's not getting bought in a retail store at that kind of $3,000 price point.
No, so there's no point in focusing there then, your energies, is there?
I think that there is always an argument that some kind of visual is positive, but in my experience, the goal is to get it into rental and to get it out there on artists through the rental channel. That has to be a huge part of what you're doing. And as you said, in our previous experience that we've got, if you do get visual iconography with an artist, it tends to sell other products in your range, such as the headphones, right? So this was always a big thing at Sennheiser is, you're pushing headphone sales essentially. And it's a tricky one because inevitably you end up in a world of, well, how much effort are you putting into selling something that potentially does not make you as much money as the top tier wireless product? That's always been a challenge. So I think you've got to be quite realistic about where you are as a brand and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I go back to what we were saying. Ultimately, Sennheiser, Shure, we're selling tools. We're selling quite expensive tools that require a lot of effort to make work properly and to get functioning in the correct way. And the nice thing is, where there is mystery, there is margin. So you can do quite a lot of good work in that world.
Sales tip of the day.
That's a fantastic drawing phrase. Yeah, mystery for margin.
So I don't know. It's just my opinion on it anyway. That might be complete rubbish, but I think that you have to be quite realistic about where you are in your market and what you're trying to achieve. If you're selling guitars, it's a different kind of situation to if you're selling pro audio products, which are very expensive and require an awful lot of effort to get working.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good conversation about we've traveled a bit of your journey and story. We've heard about your challenges in the sales process and understanding a little bit more about that. I think from a listener perspective, there's a lot of myths, isn't there? There's a lot of we use subjectivity as a guide, but the ultimate is that I think if we lose focus of what's really important, and it is about putting on productions that are of a high quality, that carry appeal and satisfaction for audiences, and delivering that message is a real challenge every day. And I think the UK production market, theatre music, arts, creative industry as a whole, events. I think this country does that extremely well, and a lot of that influence travels all over the globe. How have you found traveling to other parts of the world, and your response? How do people respond to you when you walk in as a representative of a brand in another country?
I think the UK, if I may say, I think the UK does this better than anybody else. Our experience in putting on shows is second to none. You will see a lot of, crew members from the UK. You'll see a lot of production managers from the UK. A lot of designers get flown out to other places to consult, to do the work. Something about just what we do, we're very, very good at it. So if you walk into, a show in another country representing a brand like we do, and you're from the UK, there is an expectation actually that you should know what you're talking about. So you have to meet that. I think we're really, really good actually in this country about not making stuff up as we go along, about being genuine and honest brokers, about knowing what we're talking about.
For the audio listeners, that was me making a very funny face, because being skilled in the art of bullshit is, I thought something. Oh, sorry. Anyway,
maybe there's an element of that. If there is anybody listening to this and you are at university or you are at school and you're thinking this might be an industry that you want to go into, the answer to it is 100% yes, because
it's a terrific industry.
It's a fantastic industry. Yeah. We are extremely good at it. The other thing that you get if you are in the UK and you're going into this industry is everybody that I've met is very generous with their knowledge, and that's why we're the best at it. You've got people that have been doing this for a very, very long time. BBC is one of the oldest broadcasters in the entire world.
Yep.
There are people who've worked there for a very long time, and they are so generous with their knowledge in terms of people who are coming up and through in sharing what they know. And we're very good as I think a country and as an industry generally about sharing that information downwards. So you've got some awesome people coming up and through at the moment, and we need more of them. And I think this industry is only going to grow and get stronger and get better, even after the pandemic and everything that's going on. And shows require people who know what they're doing to go and put them on.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of good point to kind of bring this conversation to a gentle close. Quick fire questions for the end.
We've already answered my quick fire question. I was interested in gigs, but
Okay.
You've already mentioned Frusciante. So if you're a Frusciante man,
Yeah.
who's the next guitarist? As a guitarist yourself?
Corey Wong, probably at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy is just doing awesome stuff, and he is operating as an independent in a market which, like, I don't know. He's just going from strength to strength, and he's doing it all himself, doing his own tour management, booking his own shows, promoting himself, producing his own music, releasing his own albums, doing all the mixing. It's nuts. It's absolutely insane. So no, he's a guy to go and look at for sure.
There you go. If you want something to listen to after you've listened to this podcast, Corey Wong.
Yes.
There we go. So, Jack, really, 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 really glad to see you. Thank you for your time today. It's much appreciated. I'm sure everyone will agree that hearing a little bit of knowledge and wisdom from your experience and time out in different parts of the industries was useful and important. And thank you for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to see you.
A pleasure. Thanks, Sam.
Wonderful to see you
Nice
again, man.
to see you.
Hopefully
Yeah,
it's not another 5.5 years.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
And look, you managed to get through a podcast without losing it. We've done all right. We've done all right. It's good. It's good. Thank you very much, everybody. Really great to see you again. And we'll be back soon with another one of the 2B Social podcasts. Thank you very much. Like, share, subscribe. All of the other things.
All those things.
Stuff like that. Thank you very much.